Hey everybody, thanks for being patient. I apologize for being so late. I was putting the finishing touches on the tarot webinar that, I just launched. So I talked about that on Friday. Give me 1 second here. Okay, we're back. Sorry, I just had to turn my volume down a little bit. Yeah, so I just put the tarot webinar. It is a 10-week. It's a 10-week webinar. I was going to go 12, but I thought we're gonna really get focused. We're do this thing in 10, and that includes a weekend off in September for Memorial Day. So it's going to be every Saturday for 2 hours, and it's not going to start this Saturday. That's the 4th of July weekend, but it will start the following Saturday. That's going to be on the 10th, and it will go through for 11 weeks following that, again with a break for the Labor Day weekend. So I think that puts us right around the 14th of September, if I'm not mistaken. The dates are on the page, and I'll link to it before the end of the show tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into the tarot, because a lot of people have asked me about the tarot. I used to be a professional tarot reader. That was my gig in the 90s, and I spent a lot of time doing that. I was pretty successful at it, for that time and that era, and for just kind of that stage of my life. So I got paid for it, and I was able to, make a sustainable living with a lot of low overhead. Let's put it that way. And but more importantly, I think it was a very interesting tool to kind of get in and understand certain dynamics in certain situations, because tarot will really reveal a lot, and it's an interesting system. And one of the things that I was always really very clear about whenever I would do a reading for somebody is that I would really set the space. I would be very intentional. Like when I do an invocation with the show, which we'll do tonight, I always did it with a tarot. I wouldn't do it out loud though, because I didn't know how certain people would take to it, but I was always engaged in like just setting that intention and setting that space, and saying that invocation / prayer, and it was very effective. It was a very, very effective tool. So that, that's part of the whole thing. When you work with these tools, you have to be like super grounded and understand that they are not necessarily the thing itself, but they are representations and symbols of the thing. And one of the things that I mentioned inside the description of the webinar is that if you look in the word divination, the word divine is inside of it. So there is this connection with this idea that that through tarot, the face of God is revealed. And my buddy Robert from he's originally from the United States, but now he's over in North Africa. He did a great film on the tarot. Robert Bonomo. Some of you guys know that. Some of you have seen the film, and it has to do with the major arcana and the faces of God. Really good, really good film. And I would definitely recommend that for people trying to understand the major arcana, which we'll get into quite a bit. So the idea, 10 weeks, we're going to do 2 hours every Saturday, an hour and a half of me showing you and discussing, then a half an hour question and answer. Then after every class, you will get a recording, right? So this is all Zoom technology. So you'll get a recording, and you'll be able to study up and everything. So I just launched that. It's on the website. I will I will send a. I'll show it before the end of the show tonight. So here we are. It's Sunday night, and we're talking astrology on Sunday Night AstroLive, which is what we do here, and got a lot to talk about. So I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this week's show, because I'm always trying to, figure out like what's relevant, what's topical, what is kind of more evergreen content, because we need to have a good mix of that in some ways. And I won't be doing the show next Sunday because it's 4th of July, which I think is, we're just going to hang out. We're going to have a party here at the new Casa. So that's going to happen next Sunday night. So we're going to do some United States stuff, and two people who are very close to the United States chart. And I think in both cases, you can make a case that their relationship with the United States chart has made them icons in their field. They're actors. And I'm talking about Sylvester Stallone and Tom Cruise. Now, I'm going to be doing a Matrix Mash with Emily this week on Wednesday night. And we're going to get into Tom Cruise and his filmography in a much deeper way. Tom Cruise has a very interesting filmography, as does Sylvester Stallone, by the way. Both of them have elements of predictive programming and some sci-fi stuff. It's really, really interesting. Stallone has at least 3 movies that I can just name off the top of my head that were kind of way ahead of their time. Judge Dredd, which was based on a comic book. Yeah, it's set in basically a futuristic and fascistic society where judgment is handled at street level. Like there is no judge. And then one of the characters, Armand Assante, who I think is a Mason. I think Armand Assante is a Freemason. Anyway, he introduces this robot who is going to displace these judges, like Judge Dredd, who is played by, of course, Sylvester Stallone. So that's an interesting movie. And I believe, what's the other one? Demolition Man with Wesley Snipes. And I talked a little bit about that movie with Russ Winter on Friday. But if you go all the way back to the beginning of Sylvester Stallone's movie career, he was in a film called Death Race 2000. And the star of that movie was David Carradine, who played a character by the name of Frankenstein. Frankenstein was his name. And anyway, the whole idea with Death Race 2000 was that it was like the Gumball Rally, only you got points for taking people out. And that was one of those films as a kid we loved. We loved Death Race 2000. We thought it was the bomb. So Stallone plays a character by the name of Machine Gun Joe the Turbo. Machine Gun Joe the Turbo. That's his name. So again, he kind of starts off with this interesting, slightly dystopic, Roger Corman-esque world of mayhem, right? Mayhem, where anything goes. And of course, he plays Rambo. And Rambo is a very interesting character in terms of the American psyche and standing up against authority, which is what he does really well in that film. And Rambo is kind of he's damaged goods and a vigilante-like character, and he's a badass. So Stallone is known for some very iconic movies. Tonight, what we're really going to do, just for the sake of like brevity and clarity, is we're going to look at Rocky. And we're going to look at Stallone's chart with the relationship with the United States. And we're going to look at the opening night for Rocky, a very, very instrumental, life-changing moment in time for Sylvester Stallone, and astrologically, you can clearly see how his life is going to change with that movie. It's really interesting, super interesting. And Tom Cruise might be connected to the United States and the chart of the United States more than any other actor or actress, or I guess they call actresses actors. No, they're all actors, right? Which I think sucks. You know, like I think, oh, look who's here. Speaking of actor, there he is. He is, you're a little late, buddy. You know, he wasn't up here when I was working on the webinar stuff. He was not here. He was downstairs. I think he was getting a bath from Rosie. He feels a little wet. So did you get a little licking there? Is that what happened? Anyway, as soon as I started talking, here he is. He just jumps right in. You want to say hi to your loving and adoring public, Mr. Jasper? Anything you want to say? You were really talkative last time. You had some stuff you wanted to say, didn't you? Oh, you're getting some purr in action. Of the two cats, Rosie is the bigger purrer. She is the bigger purrer. The two cats outside are really nice, by the way. They're super cool. I like them a lot. Max and Casper. Yeah, Max and Casper want to come in and eat some of your wet food. But Tom Cruise might be the most iconic. Well, he's iconic, but in relationship to the United States chart, you can see it, man. You can see why Tom Cruise is, in a lot of ways, who he is. You can make an astrological case that that Tom Cruise is the most all-American actor in cinematic history, just based on his birth chart. Okay, and look at his roles. The roles they're there. And like I said, Emily and I are going to go into Tom Cruise's filmography, and we'll break a lot of his movies down, the ones we think are important. Tonight, I'm going to look at one film in particular, and it really, again, I think, sets Tom Cruise off in his career. And a lot of people think that it's risky business, which, he does the dance and everything. And that's Tom Cruise taking a star turn. Prior to risky business, I think there was All the Right Moves, where he plays a football player who's accused of doing something that he didn't really do, or I can't remember now whether he did it and he fucked up or he didn't really do it. I think I'm not sure he really did. Anyway, he plays a football player in a Pennsylvania. It's actually a pretty good movie, and it stars Sean Penn's brother, the one that died, the big guy, the funny guy. Anyway, he's in there. It's a pretty good movie. But the movie that we're going to look at tonight, as it relates to Tom Cruise's chart, is a movie called Taps. And that's where I think Tom Cruise really kind of jumps off the screen and becomes very noticeable. He is super noticeable in Taps. And that's a film with Timothy Hutton. And Timothy Hutton was sort of the big star at that time. Sean Penn is also in Taps. But it's Tom Cruise who kind of steals the movie in a lesser role. And again, through astrology, I'm going to make a case as to why I think in that moment in time, in Tom Cruise's life, why that happened and why his character became kind of this signature for Tom Cruise in some ways. Also, tonight, I'm going to look at John McAfee's chart. I'm going to revisit John McAfee's chart. Now, when I first looked at his chart, this isn't the first time I've looked at his chart. But the first time I looked at his chart, it was a natal chart. And It's kind of an interesting chart. Like, first of all, the thing that you may not be aware of is that John McAfee was born in England. And then eventually he moved to the United States. So John McAfee was, in some ways, international by birth. So we'll look at his birth chart and we'll kind of cruise around his birth chart again. But what I really want to look at and pay attention to is his progress chart, because there's something very interesting about his progress chart, especially as it relates to the, what's the word I'm looking for? The sort of the noise, the buzz, the chatter that's around McAfee. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say, ooh, John McAfee holds all the cards and he's got all the goods on the deep state, and it's gonna force all of these arrests and trials, and like I'm not gonna go there. I don't really buy into that world because I think that it creates a fiction of reality that is not really healthy. That's not to say that there aren't things that happen, because things do happen. That's not to say that there are deep state players within deep state players within deep state players. While I was working on the information for the webinar, which is very affordable, by the way, try to make these things affordable for people. I'm not out here to gouge you, okay? I'm not out here to gouge you. So it's an affordable 10-week webinar. And I think what did I come up with? $220. Not bad, right? It's not bad. Like, you could probably put together $220 to do a 10-week webinar, 90 minutes on a Saturday. Now, there's a school of thought, well, geez, you should probably charge $1,000 for that, because then people will really, really respect it, and people will really get it. Oh, you're worth $1,000 too. It's like, those voices in my head, I don't always pay attention to them, because I want to make people, I want to give people an opportunity to dip in here. And I figure, if I get enough people for the webinar, it'll be fine. It'll be absolutely fine. And you get value out of it. I get value out of it. So anyway, while I was listening to the webinar, I started working on the webinar. I was listening to Dave Scorpio, Giuseppe, Mike Gaddy, Daryl Wayne, some interesting characters. And all four of them had the same POV that I did with John McAfee, in that it is, in a lot of ways, irrelevant, right? In a lot of ways, it's irrelevant. And Mike Gaddy said something that I completely agree with, is that now they've got the ability to move information in almost any direction. They can move you in any single direction that they want to. They can leave breadcrumbs that are fake. They can. So one of the things that I was texting with Emily today, and we'll get into some of this with the MASH on Wednesday, is that we don't really understand fully what's going on with reality. Okay, let's just agree upon that right now. And I go through my weekday show, and I try to pull things apart. But what I try to do in my weekday show is to try to illustrate the programming and get behind some of the scenes, because one of the things that I really, really focused on last week during the show was this event. Well, it's not an event; it's an ongoing operation with Blackstone, and Blackstone coming into the residential real estate market and just absolutely destroying it, like being this black hole inside of the real estate market. So I spent a lot of time last week getting into that, going back into the roots of communism and socialism and Bolshevism in this country, and trying to get people to wrap their heads around this. This is something that I talked about with the last eclipse, the last lunar eclipse, and the idea of Phobos and Deimos. And with the lunar eclipse, which we it was the solar eclipse. My bad. It was the solar eclipse, and it was solar eclipse in Gemini. Yeah, we had the solar eclipse in Gemini, and then we had the lunar eclipse too. So we just went through this eclipse season. So it was the lunar eclipse, and it was on the U.S. Mars, and I got into this whole thing around Phobos and Deimos because of Gemini, right? Gemini, and the connection between Phobos and Deimos is that they're the moons of Mars, and Mars has two moons. So we were invoking Gemini here. And it's kind of a model of where we are. So we have Phobos, which are fears, and they're phantoms. And they are these things that aren't tangible. We don't they can, take up rent in our heads, but they're not theoretically real. We spend a lot of time processing information that we think is real, but it's not real at all. Some people might say, well, none of it is real. And there's a case to be made for that, I suppose. But here on this plane of existence in third dimensional reality, where some things actually do add up, that sometimes 1 and 1 plus 1 is 1, or I'm sorry, 2, and 2 plus 2 is 4. That sometimes physical reality is there are things here we need to pay attention to, right? So that's the Deimos part. Those are the demons that are really out there and really wreaking havoc in our lives versus the imagined ones, or the Phobos that is occupying rent in our heads. So this is one of the things that I was talking about last week, is that BlackRock is something to really wrap your head around. It's not just BlackRock. There's Blackstone. There's a few other companies too, and they are just consuming, right, commercial real estate like Ms. Pac-Man. And what's interesting is that we had that event on Thursday, and we're going to look at that chart too. We're going to look at the chart of the collapse of the condos in Miami at 8777 Collins Avenue. Now, again, this is where the Phobos and the Deimos emerge. And the Phobos part is, well, guess what? John McAfee tweeted, hey, look, I've got all this shit at this building at 8777 Collins Street, and I've got all these files, and if something happens to me, you know about this. And then this thing theoretically happens. Again, we don't really know. Okay, we don't know. First of all, do we really know if John McAfee was in prison? That's number one. Do we know if he was really in a Spanish prison? Well, we think we did. There's some evidence that a plane from Spain went from Spain to the United States. Okay, all right, well, maybe there's a connection there. But we don't really know if he was in prison. Just like we don't really know if Edward Snowden is in Russia, or Edward Snowden's in Russia. How do you know? How do you know that Edward Snowden is in Russia? You don't know that. I mean, that's where they say he is, but you don't know that. Whenever he shows up with the background blacked out, and there's no way of telling where he is at all, period, end of story. And even if he somehow did a proof of life, I mean, the way that technology is so sophisticated now, they could run a green screen behind him, and they could run something that would resemble, I don't know, Moscow rush hour. So who knows? But we don't know if he's in Moscow. We don't even know if Julian Assange is still in prison in Germany, and I'm sorry, in Great Britain. We don't know that. We don't know that. We think we do. We assume it because somebody says he's there. But we really don't know. And this is an astrological dynamic, because we are in this nodal phase with the true node in Gemini, where there are not just one or two realities, there are multiple realities happening simultaneously now. And we are in a hall of mirrors. A hall of mirrors. And I think that I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of this. And how these separate realities are stitched together. Okay. I read a story on Zero Hedge on Friday night, and it had to do with Sheriff Mack, who was on my show on Friday, not this week, but the week prior. You can go see that interview over on Rumble, my Rumble channel, and I'll just show you now. I mean, why not? Okay, where are we? So I had this interview with Sheriff Mack on my Rumble channel from last week. It's a good interview. It's a really good interview. So I'll show you my my Rumble channel so you guys can eyeball it. Everything that I do on 15 Minutes of Flame gets uploaded here, right here. So this was from last week, right? So this is Thursday show, Wednesday show. I re-uploaded the show with Emily because it was the wrong content. So Strange Attraction, it's a really good show. So it's all here. And then there's the interview with Sheriff Mack. That's from the I put that up on the 19th only because it was the day after. And I did the Friday forecast on the 18th. So anyway, it's just a day after that. That's why the dates are different. But it's part of the same show. I just stripped it out and I put it up on the 19th. Okay, so there you go. Yeah. So Sheriff Mack is in, what is that? Green thing right there. That's interesting. Anyway, Sheriff Mack is in Nevada. And he's working with these sheriffs in order to get them up to speed on the Constitution and declare themselves like constitutional counties. Like this is his work. This is his mission, and he's on this tour with Robert David Steele. And so I read this piece on Zero Hedge, and it's about Sheriff Mack and what I think is good work. And then there's a quote from Steele. Doesn't he say Robert David Steele? Terribly written. It says, Steele says that the NSA has every single recording and chat and this and that, and he gets granular. And then he says, and we're coming for you. So what they did is they stitched together this story about Sheriff Mack doing these trainings, and then they got a quote from Robert David Steele, and then they somehow managed to make it sound like that's what they were doing. Like these sheriffs were going to come for the NSA. And that's a real Gemini thing. This is the reason I'm telling you about it, is because that's a Gemini thing. That they're taking these two separate realities, or theoretically separate. I mean, they are, really, because Robert David Steele's got his own program going on. And again, who is he? Who is Robert David Steele? Do we really know? Do we really know who Robert David Steele is? Well, he says he's ex-CIA. Okay. Well, we'll give him that. Are you really ex-CIA? Anyway, they took these two disparate narratives, welded them together, and ultimately, if you're like looking at Sheriff Mack and the work that he's doing, it's not going to reflect really well, because you've got this other guy who's basically saying, hey, the sheriffs in America are coming after the NSA, and that's not what they're doing. But again, this is what happens during this Gemini time, and they're creating these multiple versions of reality, and they can just sample any one version of reality at any time. At any time, they can just sample it. It's like, it's just there. Okay, we'll grab this, or we'll grab this, or we'll grab this, and we'll put this in. This is where we are right now. So it's very hard to make any real assessment over somebody like John McAfee. And frankly, I'm not all that. I mean, he's an odd character, weirdly compelling, right? Strangely compelling, and kind of very American in some ways, like an outlaw. The last of really kind of the anti-heroes. And theoretically, what McAfee was, what, 70, 78? He was almost 80 years old. I mean, theoretically. Now, there are theories, and this is where the astrology would come into play when I show you that the guy that's been floating around is John McAfee, a John McAfee. In fact, there are multiple John McAfees, and that'll show up in the astrology. You'll see it. So we're going to get into the event in Miami, Florida. We're going to look at the chart for that. I don't think it's connected to John McAfee at all, and I'm not sure, what's really going on there. It does look like it's a controlled demolition. I'm sure there's insurance that's going to be changing hands big time as a result of that. And it's afforded Ron DeSantis a Rudy Giuliani moment. That DeSantis is walking through the rubble and he's playing the Giuliani role after 9/11. And it has weird echoes with 9/11 too. So we're going to get into all that tonight. There's a lot ahead of us. And we also have the little chart of the moment action. In the meantime, let me check in with you. Again, my apologies for being late. I just needed to put the finishing touches on this tarot thing because I told you guys I would have it ready tonight. And I try to be as much of a man of my word as I possibly can be. So let's see, who do we have here in the chat? We have, let's start at the beginning. We've got 177 people watching. Okay, we have, right at the beginning, the love bat and lead off tonight, the lovely and talented Joan S. Well, I'm way behind here. Let's see, I'm going right there. Okay. Let's see, who else we have? Oh, look, it's Trago, Otto, Geocrat, 666. Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. Kara McLaughlin is here. Hello, Kara. April Himmel. W.C. Ray, the biggest Danny Gatton fan in the known universe. But thanks for turning me on to some of Danny's stuff, by the way. Hannah Stimson in the house. Lepicious. What's going on over there on the left coast? Nice to see you. Elizabeth W. There she is. Introspective woodworker. My man, Ryan. What's happening? Kirk J's here. Susan Cano. Only you know. And I can know. Oh, that's kind of a bad one. Misty Miner. Hey, what's going on? Misty Miner Mountaintops. Good to see you. FOP77 checking in from the great white north. CC Jones in the house. Hello, CC. Your baby is due early July, and the astrologers are freaking me out about the timing. Help ease my fears. Well, it's all divine. Come on now, let's go. It's all divine. And I don't know if you're listening to the YouTube astrologers about early July. Yeah, early July is a little intense from a mundane perspective, but there's a lot of different things. So let's just go back and let's talk about Ptolemy. Ptolemy, who's the father of Western astrology, said astrology is a really good tool, and I'm a firm believer in astrology as a tool, but it is not the end all and be all, which explains everything. He was actually more of an astronomer than an astrologer, but he was a good astrologer. Don't get me wrong. We have Placidus astrology, which is the astrology of signs versus constellations and 12 houses and 30 degrees and all that stuff, really thanks to Ptolemy. But one of the things he said is that you're a byproduct of your time and you're a byproduct of your place as much as you're a byproduct of your parents, as much as you are a byproduct of celestial influence and the chart. So all three of those things are part of the mix. And I'll give you an example of this. I was having a discussion with somebody on my text, and we were talking about this idea of racism. And for me, racism was a very foreign concept because when I was young, because I grew up in California, which was probably demographically the most mixed state in the US in the 70s. And everybody I grew up with, starting from the 4th grade on, was either Mexican or Black or Japanese. And then shortly thereafter, there were a lot of Filipinos that came into San Jose, came into my neighborhood. And then we started to get people from the Middle East. And there was this Persian guy that started to go to school with me. And then there were Koreans that started to go to school with me. And then there were Samoans. So there were, all these people were, congregating during a time where, I was growing up in the 1970s, and we all got along, we all hung out, we all partied. It wasn't that big a deal. And the person I was talking with grew up in Chicago, which is very different area, and neighborhoods of just absolute poverty and blight, and really entrenched sorts of like roles, right? Like if you wanted to get a job and it was a job with a union or a corporation, there was a chance that if you were Black and uneducated, or Black and if you were educated, you might be passed over in a place like that. I'm just saying, and I'm not down with critical race theory because of a lot of things. I mean, the United States, decided they were going to declare war on poverty in 1963 with Lyndon Baines, 64, 65, Lyndon Baines Johnson, the Great Society, and all of these entitlements. And it's become more and more entrenched in our culture and in our socioeconomic model, for better or worse, and a lot of times for the worse. So that's been happening since like 1964, 65. And the world that he's talking about, in a lot of ways, was created before that. But it's true. Like, I didn't grow up in that era. I mean, I didn't grow up in that area. We grew up in the same era, but not in the same area. Not in the same area. So place does mean a lot. Okay. It means a hell of a lot. My relationship with other races and other cultures is very different, because socioeconomically, we were all kind of in the same zip code. I mean, we really were the same zip code. Socioeconomically, we were there. We were in the same place, right? So that being a determining factor, it kind of leveled the playing field. Whereas a place like Chicago, the zip codes were real different. And again, I lived in California, and there was a lot of opportunity in California. So your daughter is going to be born in a specific place. That's going to mean something, right? It's going to mean something, into a specific family with you. Again, that's going to mean something. There's going to be your chart interacting with her chart. Okay. I'm assuming father here, so Misty, forgive me, but a father, right? You got a father coming in, and the father has a chart. And if there's siblings have charts, and all those things are going to, have an impact on that child's astrological experience. The home is going to have an impact. Like I said, the family life is going to have an impact. The geographical area is going to have an impact. And then the time, and that's a really interesting thing, right? The time that she's going to be born into is a time unlike any other. So, but the thing is that all the kids that are born, this is, again, it's kind of this leveling out in some ways, that all the kids are going to be born during this time. Well, not all of them, by the way, because we're going to have kids that are going to start to show up here in September and October. And some of these kids are going to be, they're going to be post-vaccine kids, post-carjack babies. Remember the carjack, that's the code here. Post-carjack babies. And the carjacks that are the, how do we say this? The souped up carjacks. And the souped up carjacks where the mother doesn't suffer any ill effects of the carjack. We don't know how these carjackings are going to impact these kids. We really don't, because think about this for just a minute. the idea of mRNA, which is, it moves throughout the body. This is one of the things that a fundamental understanding of the carjacking is essential here. A normal carjack stays in one area of the skin. It gets this right there. Gets sore. There's a crisis, a healing crisis in that area, and you have your essential kind of spike protein moment, but it's just there, right? It doesn't go anywhere else. That's not true with the modern carjack, the latest version of the carjack, which travels throughout the entire body. So it's moved into your organs. It's moved into, well, your bloodstream. And if it's moved into your bloodstream, that means that a mother is sharing the carjacking with their unborn child. And we don't know how that's going to affect the unborn child. Like right now, there are children who are going through a biological process that is very foreign to perhaps any other child in recent memory, if not history. There's something going on. There is a dark alchemy going on inside of the embryo, inside the womb, the embryo in the womb of the child and the mother. We don't know the impact of a child who will be born into this world that has been kind of interstitially bonding with mRNA, and we will see them hit the scene in September and October. So when I say every child will be born into the same time, that's true, and it's not true. The other thing that's really interesting is that when we look at, and I've always found this to be one of the most salient points of the English language when it comes to the documents of the founding fathers. The line is, we are all created equal. So I often thought about, well, what does that mean? Well, I mean, theoretically, there's a God that creates all of us equally in the eyes, in the ears, and the body of God, that we are the image of God. So that's one version of equal. The other version of equal is that we are created equally, meaning that we have all been created to this point, and I'd say most of us, I'd say the great majority of us, created equally, meaning that we were the progeny of a biological act. Two people got together and had sex, and then this is what happened. We were all created equally. Now, were we born equally? That's a whole other discussion. So this idea of being created equally, whether it's in the eyes of God, that God creates everybody in the image and body of God, right? I mean, that's one version of it. But even the biological act is equal. It's shared amongst everybody pretty much equally, unless, of course, there's a rape, and that's but it's still a biological function. So this is not going to be true now, though. We are no longer created equally. If somebody has been created without either parent getting the hijack, and let's take the shedding, the viral shedding, just out of the picture for a moment, okay? Let's not talk about that. Let's leave it off to the side for now. Let's just try to keep this hermetically sealed. That if those two people got together and they had good old biological sexual intercourse, they created good old biological little analog baby, that's a version. Now we have, guess what? We have the carjack version, which is not created equally. And we don't know what the differentiator is going to be. There's not an equal equation for creation when it comes to those two models. And that's if the mRNA carjacking has been in place, and the person who's been carjacked will continue to keep their child, and we know that there have been miscarriages. So that's going to be very interesting to see. So not every kid is going to be born into this world in sort of the same way that, like everybody in the 70s or the 60s, we all came in the same way, same time, different geographical locations, and they play a role in our evolution, but not now. This is different. We're in a different place, different time, and we could even speculate that there might be a different species. We're headed into the great unknown. The great unknown. This is going to be a very interesting time. So I hope I have allayed your fears a little bit, right? Because it's not just what's happening astrologically in early July. What do we have? Well, we have Mars. We have Mars. It's going to be squaring Uranus, actually opposing Uranus, Mars opposing Uranus, squaring Saturn. Okay, that's happening. We know that. That's going on. We've got some retrograde planets going on. Neptune just went retrograde. So, but again, they're going to be a factor theoretically in your daughter's chart, but they're not the only factor. And people have had Mars, Saturn oppositions, Mars, Uranus squares. They've had them before, in history, historically speaking, and I'm sure they lived at the very least interesting lives. I mean, that's pretty rebellious, actually. If you have a Mars-Uranus square and a Mars-Saturn opposition, you have Mars and Leo, I mean, you could birth somebody who really knows who they are and won't settle for any bullshit, right? Mars-Saturn opposition, they grow up and, they're the state's, worst nightmare. Somebody who knows who they are. Mars-Uranus opposition, breaking rules, systems buster. I mean, there's some interesting stuff there. I mean, you may have a bit of a challenge, when the child is young to corral and harness that energy, but that's part of parenthood in a lot of ways. So, I mean, that's another thing to think about, right? I mean, there are interpretive ways to understand astrology, especially, and here's what I get. So when somebody has a baby, I try not to, people have asked me well, can you read for my baby? I'm like, not really. I don't like doing that. I don't like doing it. But what I can do and what I have done is I could say some general things. Right? I've said a few general things, but you don't want to take an imprint of a chart and a child and give that to somebody just after they've had a baby. You don't want to do that. You want to let that person explore who that child is without saying, oh, well, this astrologer said that, there's this going on and that going on. I think children, you should wait a while with kids. You should wait, I think, till maybe they're about, 3, 4, even 5 years old before you really kind of dive into their chart, unless you want to do it online and do it yourself and go, look at that. And even with my own kid, I didn't understand and really unlock his chart for a while. Like it took me to get into his teens to begin to see things in a way that I had never seen before. And one of the reasons why is because I was too engaged with like parenting him and having a relationship with him that wasn't necessarily astrologically based. But what do you think? I've looked at your chart. You're trouble. You're trouble. He's got a star chart. This is the chart. This is the chart of a cult leader. This is the chart of a cult leader. You think he's just a cat? No, you're wrong. Wait till he shows up in your dreams and starts sending you messages. Yeah. Yep. Wait till he starts to give you the knowing. Oh yeah. You're hooked for life. Jasper's a Taurus. You're just You're just as sweet as molasses, Taurus, aren't you? Anyway, so try not to get too hung up on the conditions of what's going on astrologically. There's so much in play. There's just so much in play. And again, you're not going to really know until your child takes that first breath. And what happens if so first part of July, so we're talking Cancer, which is fine. It's a fine sign to be born under Cancer. Then what happens if your child is like, say, oh, I don't know, Taurus rising, and their sun is in sextile with the ascendant? Boy, that's really good. That's really, really good. Or let's say they're, oh, I don't know, Virgo rising, and the sun is in sextile to the ascendant. Or even Scorpio rising would be kind of interesting. And a Cancer sun, in trine with the ascendant. So you don't really know. You just don't know. What happens if your child's sun is conjunct the midheaven, and all of a sudden you've got kind of a, in terms of astrology, a real faded chart, no matter what else is going on with the rest of the aspects. So just try to take a deep breath, go along for the ride. Don't stress out about what other astrologers are saying about this time astrologically, because it's an incomplete picture. And they certainly are not taking into account the other things that I talked about: your home, your family, you, the father, other people in the family. All those things play a part, play a role, and tell a story. Okay, I hope I have allayed your fears just a little bit. Okay, let's see, where are we with everyone? I'm trying to catch up here. It's Kara. My bad. It's not Misty. It's Kara. Misty, you do have kids though. I think you just had them last year. Kara, I hope that helped out. Ricky Ricardo in the house. What's going on, Ricky? Julie Sunshine 333. There's my man, Rob Chopra. T. Jordan Tomas. What's going on? Stephen Andres. What's going on, Stephen? Susie Gemini. Hello to both of you. Marianne Smith checking in from San Francisco. The Tenderloin, to be exact. MK is here. Scrubbies, hello, Tamra. My man Steve, Thor by the Door, Chaos Engagement. Sure, Losciavo. Father Losciavo. That guy, wasn't that guy from some school in California? What is it? Michael's here, he would know. Let's see. Michael's sister Nina. What's going on, brother? Nathaniel Graham, the great American hero, one of the founding fathers of the 21st century. He just doesn't know it yet. Onion Head Media. Well, it looks like Thor took care of business there. Marie MacArthur. Oh, Onion Head Media. I guess Onion Head Media is on his way out of here. Tom Cruise has got to be an MK Ultra puppet. Well, maybe. Maybe. He sure is a hell of a chart and sure syncs up with the US chart. We'll get into him. Let's see. Davey Doss. Hello, Davey. Charles Mazak, my man Charles. Here he is. The one and only Masaki Miyagawa, the Doge father himself. Cindy Burton. Hi, Cindy. Let's see. Steve Letro. What's going on, Steve? Good to see you. April Himmel's here. Nicholas. Hey, Nicholas. Nice to see you. Top Gun and Simple Gematria, 93 equals Saturn. I Pet Goat, End of Days. The Police, John Wick. Good crowd showing up tonight. You're one of them. What's going on? CMOs. I was heavily influenced by Rocky. Please don't burst one of my... No. Rocky is an American story. Rocky's an American story. You know what's amazing about Rocky? They made Rocky in 28 days. They made Rocky in 28 days for under $1 million. Think about that. Think about that. All right, who else do we have here? Let's see. Tinfoil Tiara. I know I'm way behind, but I just got to say hi to everybody. Windhammer. Oh, is Maurice here? Where's Maurice? Hey, Maurice. I thought Born on the 4th of July was really good in showing the before and after. So what's interesting about Born on the 4th of July is that Ron Kovic, who plays, well, Tom Cruise plays Ron Kovic. And Ron Kovic was born on the 4th of July, hence the title of the movie, Born on the 4th of July. And Tom Cruise is born on the 3rd of July, almost on the 4th of July. So very interesting sync between Tom Cruise and Ron Kovic via sun sign, right? So I'm behind a little bit here. So I'm John McAfee, Pooh Stellium. Oh, that's good. Your face is in shadow and your glasses reflect the computer screen. I know it looks a little sci-fi. It looks a little surreal. Godard. This is a Godard moment. I like Godard. Jean-Luc Godard was an interesting director. They don't make directors like Godard. By the way, Alphaville, very good movie. Let's see. Let's move ahead. What do we got here? What BlackRock is doing should be illegal. Oh, shit, man. BlackRock, they should shut it down. Nobody's going to talk about BlackRock, though. Nobody's going to talk about it. Nope, 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 nope. No, I mean, I do, but you're not going to hear about it on the news. You're certainly not going to hear about it in Congress. They're not going to trot Larry Fink out there. I mean, Larry Fink works for the fucking government at this point. Welsh Rose is in the house. What's going on? Good to see you. Great interview. Yeah, Richard Mack. Hey, it's Dawn Hart. Hello, Dawn. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're healing. Ferris Galeon. What's going on, brother? Hope you're doing well. California. Doing your thing. Let's see. Who else we have here? Sheila Sampson. Hello, Sheila. Hello. Good to see you. We're getting close. I was just thinking about Rocky in relation to the North Carolina State baseball team as the people's champ after the NC2A snubbed them due to their COVID rules. Well, they had 4 players get vaccinated. 4 players got the carjack, and then they tested positive. There you go. There you go. Let's see. JJ Rain DeBlanc, one of my Twitter friends, is here tonight. Mary Sue. Hello, Mary Sue. Heather Gianna. Aries on fire in the house. Ani Brito. Hello, Ani. There she is, the winch with the wrench. Hey, there's Ursilia. Man, this is a very Cancerian kind of gathering. A lot of Cancerian. I love this. I love who's here tonight. Carolina G, Father Loshava, USF. There you go. It was USF. I knew it was one of those schools. Yeah. USF had one of the greatest college basketball teams of all time. One of the greatest college basketball teams ever. Quentin Daly, Bill Cartwright, Winfred Boynes, James Hardy. They were amazing. Unfortunately, I kind of think they threw a game. I think the coach was Bob Gaylord. And all those guys were getting paid to go to USF. It was something else, man. It was something else. I think who else on that team? Marlon Cox, very good team. I mean, I think they had like 25 wins in a row or something like that. And then they got beat in the NC2As, and they looked really bad doing it. But one of the great college basketball teams in the 20th century. Let's see, who else do we have here? Anybody else? Did I miss anybody? Jer, what's going on, Jer? Nice to see you. Half Q. What's going on, Half Q? Here's one of my Twitter peeps. Paulette, have you heard medical jabbers get paid $3,800? Whoa, $3,800 per carjack. That's pretty good dough. Let's see. I love your truth about looking at your boy's chart. Thank you for telling about the growth. I raised 4 very different children, very beautiful, sometimes troubled children, all adults now. Yep. Cremies in the house. We got an all-star lineup here tonight. An all-star lineup. Jasper convinces his followers to no, he's not that kind of a cult leader. Jasper will convince you to do good deeds. To do good deeds for other cats. Yes, you, Rayanne, you are, Jasper has completely sucked you in. Completely sucked you in. A friend of mine in her 30s totally loved the idea of the singularity. She saw it as the natural and logical evolution of humanity. Could not help her see it in any of the terms. I always felt like, does a chart ever reveal if someone is a walk-in? That's a really interesting question. Where can I get the saline placebo? Good job with that. Good luck with that, Ruben. I think you could probably get a card placebo, a certificate placebo, possibly. I think you're playing with the Wheel of Fortune on the carjack side with that. So the walk-in thing is really interesting. Okay, so I don't have a walk-in story per se, but I do have a story about somebody. Oh, okay, before I get there, there's the other thing too that people don't understand about astrology and charts is that, of course, it's easy to kind of nail down what we would call a birth chart because we know when somebody's born, the time that they're born, generally, right? But there are conception charts too. And there are astrologers that work with conception charts, and I've done that. If you know the time that you conceived a child, that's kind of an interesting thing to look at. And so there's another thing you can play around with, a conception chart. They're kind of cool. And you can take a conception chart and a birth chart, and you can do, maybe you can do a midpoint composite, and you come up with, this thing that represents both. It's just another way of playing with astrology. Okay. We should probably get into the chart of the moment stuff. It's been so cool, like connecting with you guys and just greeting all of you, seeing all the old faces here. It's great. Let's see. Kevin, my man. Good to see you too, Kevin. There he is. Let's see. Here's Lynn, Finca. What's going on? What's going on, Lynn? Yes, thank you, Tom. I should be doing. I just, you know what happened with me on Cato. Hello, Cato. Hey, there's Claire. There's also the chart preconception when we make agreements. That's funny. Yeah, I guess so. I guess so. All right, I'll share the agreement moment. I'll share the agreement moment with you. I don't think I've ever shared this story. It's kind of an interesting story. Anyway, so my then wife had gone to see a hypnotherapist on a particular day. Gone to see a hypnotherapist a particular day. And, and I'm sitting around, I'm, hanging out in the condo. We were actually in like what's called corporate housing. We're just there temporarily. And she went to go see this hypnotherapist to, help her quit smoking. I appreciated that. She wanted to quit smoking. So she did what a lot of smokers do. They go and get some hypnotherapy and have this way to get in their subconscious and stop smoking. Well, ironically, it worked. But it worked in a way that, well, let's just say you wouldn't necessarily use this as a method to quit smoking. All right. So she comes back from the hypnotherapist. She tells me about the story, the time of the hypnotherapist, which sounded kind of odd, actually. It was it sounded a little odd. Like, I don't think anything untoward happened. It sounded a little odd. And then she looks at me, she says, after she told me what happened, she said, "Do you want to have a baby?" And I'm thinking, philosophically, yeah, sure. Well, I'm open to it. I've always wanted to have kids. I think I'd be a good dad. I'm like, yeah. And she's like, right now. I'm like, okay, all right. Well, let's go make a baby. And I swear to God, as it was happening, there was this vortex that was spinning around the room on top of ground zero. Okay. There was this vortex. I could feel it, and I knew what was happening. I knew exactly what was happening. It was happening. And yeah. So to your point, Claire, the agreement and the thing were actually minutes apart. Minutes apart. So it was interesting to have, because they always talk about, or they, or there, that you want to be conscious, right? Like you want to have this conscious moment when you have a child, so you can, give birth to a conscious child. And then I was conscious. It was happening. We had opened the gate. The portal was open, and the presence was there for sure. In fact, it was there for another 24 hours. It wasn't just that day, 24 hours. The gate was open. Very interesting. And as a result, my ex-wife got pregnant and she stopped smoking. So it was effective. That hypnosis technique was effective. It's like, get pregnant, stop smoking. Good job. Well done. Well done, hypnotherapist. All right. What do you guys think about that story? Yep. Let's see. When the opportunity strikes, vortexes happen. Yeah, right? Totally. Yeah, it's true. Out of the blue, ask you. Yeah, I mean, it was really. Is there an installment chart? Now you're getting there. You guys are going deep now, Steve. Coitus is not exactly equal conception. Sperm lived for days. Well, in that moment, there was a merging. It wasn't just biological. It wasn't just a biological operation, let's put it that way. There was something else going on in a much bigger way. All right, let's do a little invocation, and we'll get into the chart of the moment. We got a lot of ground to cover. We're running late tonight. I'm an hour in because I started an hour late, but I'm feeling rather loquacious. Anyway, all right, here we go. Dear blessed and holy Mother, Father God, of the great central sun within the universal light, which is the light of Yeshua, Sananda, Emmanuel. We ask that only the highest and best information, wisdom, and truth come through this channel at this time, and in so doing, we affirm and decree the qualities of clarity and consciousness, character, courage, conviction, faith, humor, strength, compassion, empathy, and above all, love. We ask that any karmic residue be cleansed, purified, clarified, and removed from the stream. Go away, be removed, so that we can all resume our place in our lives as a result. All right. So let me just get into where we are astrologically real quick. Then we're going to get into some of this chart stuff because I think it's really cool, especially Stallone and Cruise, and you'll see some cool shit with their charts and these two particular movies that I think in a lot of ways put both of them on the map. Taps being an underrated kind of moment in Tom Cruise's career. All right, so here we go. Let's bring up the old website here. All right. Okay. Oh, that's not where are we? Yeah, that's fine. All right. The gang's all here tonight. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Oh, where am I? Sometimes my mind takes flight. All right. All right, here we go. It is the chart of the moment, the 27th of June, 2021. And Austin is close enough for jazz, as they say. We got Capricorn on the ascendant right there with Pluto. So what are we talking about? It's interesting. We've been talking about birth, haven't we? Birth, biology, sex, Pluto on the ascendant. There we go. We're in the groove. We're in the astrological groove. Yep. And then we've got this opposition going on with Venus. Venus just moving into Leo. So we're coming up on the Venus-Mars conjunction. That's going to be happening. That is the week of Cyber Polygon, July 9th. Venus-Mars conjunction. The relationship between the male and the female, right there. Boom, masculine and feminine. And Pluto on the other side. Yeah, I think it's pretty timely conversation. Oh, by the way, last week I had Meredith Swain of Meredith's Lucky Stars on, which was great. I really liked her and enjoyed our time. And we talked about Greta Thunberg. And I said, I kind of pointed out that Saturn was going to go over her Neptune, and we're talking about Greta, leaving the res, going off the res. And I think it was the next day or the day after where Greta's talking about that there is no such thing as climate change. It was like, you should see the guy's look on his face. He was fucking shocked. We both laughed like, oh, there it is. The Greta program is over. I think they're going to have a hard time with the Greta program. I think they're going to have to shut that down. They're going to have to shut her down, or they're going to have to either shut her down or just placate her and give her whatever she wants. Apparently, she drives a Tesla. Does that surprise you? Not me. All right, here we go. Let's see. What do we have? We got Saturn here, and of course Aquarius. A lot of retrograding going on. Saturn retrograde, Pluto retrograde. We have Neptune retrograde, Jupiter retrograde. All the major planets right here. The only one that's not going retrograde right now is Uranus. So a lot of retrograde energy. It's interesting. It's always interesting to get a chart where somebody has a lot of retrograde energy, a lot of retrograde planets. It's not always easy to talk about in some ways. So you have to look at everything individually, blow it up, and try to discern a pattern so that they can understand the prominence or the significance of what the retrogradism is and can play a role within their chart. So we have some of that now. And one of the things I am thinking about, Kara, is that your child will have these retrograde planets in the beginning of July. Saturn's not going to go direct until October. Pluto just went retrograde. Neptune just went retrograde. Mercury's direct, which is good. We like Mercury direct. And she will have that Venus-Mars conjunction, more than likely. I think it's a she, right? In Leo, which I think is good. I mean, the Venus-Mars people have a lot of charisma. Sometimes it's uh, kind of, on the surface, and in Leo, it'll definitely be on the surface. That's for damn sure. A lot of charisma, a lot of talent, a lot of creative talent with the Venus-Mars conjunction. But definitely some retrograding planets. And again, the idea with the reading of the chart is you want to be able to see it holistically. And again, I would really, really, if you're a parent, you have a child, and are you into astrology? I mean, you can look at things, right? I mean, that's how these things work. First thing I did is I went out and got almost right after my kid was born. I bought a book, big fat astrological book, and I just went into everything. So, yeah, I mean, but I'm just curious. But I would say, kind of have a look at things, but let your child evolve, and especially with the retrograde stuff. Like, try not to put too much emphasis on whatever that looks like or theoretically is supposed to be. But we do have these retrograde planets, and they tend to be cultural and institutional. Pluto probably has the most prominence because it's 1 degree off of the U.S. Sun. The U.S. Pluto, which natally in the U.S. chart is at 27 Capricorn. So it's moving backwards. It's moving away from the Pluto return. So I think, I think we could maybe even make a case here that it might be reflective of the fact that they've loosened the grip on the carjackings, and then the safety masks, right? They've loosened the grip on them, and I think one could make a case with the Pluto retrograde that it might be indicative of that. But then when Pluto comes around again, it goes direct, it comes around again, and it will. That moment in time, I think, well, it's going to be on 27, and that's the Pluto return. And I'm not going to go over tonight, but the first week in January of 2022 is going to be history changing. It is going. I'm telling you right now, the first week in January 2022 is going to change the world, and there's reasons for that, big reasons. But we're not there yet. And we're going to continue to go through the Pluto retrograde. And I think some of this tension that we've been experiencing is going to sort of abate. And even with Saturn in Aquarius, when Saturn went into Aquarius last year, it came on strong. And we were in lockdown with Saturn in Aquarius. We were being told, you're all going to experience the same fucking thing. That's Saturn Aquarius. The Aquarius being, of course, the Aquarian age, and this idea of group consciousness, or the collective, or this kind of archetypal tribal experience, and the collective soul, things like that. I mean, there's other versions of it. I don't really want to get into them. But there are other versions of I think, a more degraded kind of definition of this. But even with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, it's sort of like we've seen Bill Gates kind of move off of the global chessboard, Tony Fauci becoming less of a prominent figure in this whole drama, this whole story. And we're also seeing, in a lot of ways, the kind of what's behind the scenes. And there are things that they will show us behind the scenes that they do on purpose. Like this whole thing with Matt Hancock in the UK was staged. It's a totally staged event. That's a totally staged event. My buddy Paul sent me a really great text. And the guy the person who put it together said that one of the things that they are going to do, and I feel like that this made a lot of sense when I read this, that one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to show people how corrupt things are. They're going to show people how corrupt politicians are. And this whole thing with Matt Hancock was just part of that story. that they were going to, and he was playing a willing role in it. And they're going to take people down this path, and they're going to show them how fucked up the world of politics and the world of global leaders are for a very specific purpose, and that would be to replace that model and offer up a more fair, just, and better version of that. Now, this person brought in the alien invasion and the whole blue beam thing, and that we have to fight together, bond together as one planet against an evil holograph in the sky. Maybe, but I do think that there's some merit to what this person was saying, because we're already seeing it. We're seeing it with Fauci. We're seeing it with Bill Gates. We're seeing it with this guy Matt Hancock. We see it every fucking day with Joe Biden. I mean, Jesus, could it get any more weird? Yes, it can. We know it can. His whispering thing, I mean, it's just bizarre. Are you back again? Did you not get enough new followers on your Twitter page? Did you not get enough new followers on your Twitter page? He's just coming here to get followers. That's it. He's coming here to get followers and to infiltrate your dreams. So we're seeing this, right? And that's Saturn retrograde. We're seeing this retrogradism with Saturn. We're seeing these structures and the people that theoretically are the so-called elite, right? Elite being related to El, which is related to Saturn. Right? So we're seeing this retrograde, and it's like, oh, look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. They're on the run. They're on the run. We got them on the run. The voting stuff in Arizona, that and Georgia and Pennsylvania, that may come into play as well during the Saturn retrograde, because Trump is starting to come back. We've talked about this with Mars, and when Mars hits 28 degrees, it's going to hit his ascendant, and Trump will be back in our consciousness with Mars and his ascendant. Will he be back in the White House? I don't know. I'm not making any predictions. And I've been thinking about this, in a world where they want maximum chaos, overthrowing the election and putting Trump back in would certainly provide that, now wouldn't it? It certainly would. I wonder if they would also reinsert the senators and the Congress people who also had lost their races. We talked about that before. But that's what I think this Saturn retrograde is about. And over the course of the next 2 days, we're going to have this Mars-Saturn opposition. And that's one of these oppositions where, fuck it, people have had enough. I've been watching, again, I don't watch sports like I used to. I mean, I used to have Sling TV just so I could watch sports. And I don't have Sling TV anymore. But I do watch some sports highlights as they come across YouTube, or if I happen to cruise onto like CBSSports.com. One of the things I've been seeing a lot of is this thing that's happening in Major League Baseball. And it's really disturbing because pitchers they've been using this thing called spider tack, and it's been helping them throw a baseball, helping them grip a baseball. Now, it's not like using Vaseline, which Gaylord Perry, who used to pitch for the San Francisco Giants, amongst many other teams, would do. Gaylord Perry would smear Vaseline on his jersey. He would smear it on his cap. He wouldn't go to his mouth. Perry was a spitballer, but he would go to his jersey, he'd go to his cap, and he'd be able to throw the ball with Vaseline on it, and it would do weird shit. And hitters couldn't hit it. Spitball is a very difficult pitch to hit. So, and pitchers would do other things. They'd use things like sand, little bits of sandpaper, and they would scuff the ball so that they could do certain things with the ball. Now, this spider tack stuff was not considered illegal for a long time. And they changed the composition of baseballs. So they raised the seams, which made it more difficult for pitchers to actually throw a curveball. And it gave the hitters like a significant advantage. So pitchers started to use this spider tack stuff so they could get a better grip on these balls. And they changed the composition of the baseballs almost every year. Almost every year. Because I remember they used to make these baseballs in, or is it, I think they made the baseballs in Cuba or Puerto Rico or something. But then they started coming out of Haiti. And all the Haiti baseballs were different. They were like wound differently. So pitchers have been using this spider tack stuff. And Major League Baseball has really come down on them. And I've been watching these umpires come out and take on these very authoritarian roles. It's really difficult to watch because a lot of these pitchers have had it, right? They haven't just had it with like these umpires. They've had it with all this other bullshit too. So these pitchers, this one guy who was using nothing basically took his pants off on the mound. I shit you not. He took his pants off just to show that he didn't have anything. I think he got thrown out of the game. And normally, back in the old days, you would have the home plate umpire just come out to the mound. Now you've got the entire umpire crew coming out to. It's like overkill. It's like sending the SWAT team to somebody's house who hasn't paid a parking ticket. That's what it's like. And it's just weird, right? So why am I talking about this? This is this Mars-Saturn opposition. Because Mars, especially in Leo, represents like pastimes. You know, things like baseball and think games we play, right? So we have this Mars-Saturn opposition coming into play here. I could easily see this getting played out in baseball. If this thing with these umpires keeps happening, I could totally see like one of these pitchers just blowing a cork, totally blowing a cork. There's also a more, what I would call collective element here where people have had enough, right? They've had enough. And this Mars opposition to Saturn, and we're coming into the square two. There it is. It's right there, right? Boom. This is what I was talking about, 4th of July weekend. This is exactly what I was talking about. The Mars square to Uranus, Mars-Saturn opposition. Under any other circumstances, I think it could be, how do we say this? Healthy. Let's say healthy. But because of all this preloading that's been going on, there's been just a ton of preloading. It's like preloading the set, preloading the scene, preloading the psyche. And if you listen to what I talk about, you understand what I'm saying, right? They're already preloading the event canon so that when the event canon goes off, it goes off. So one of the things that's going to happen on July 2nd is the final series or the final episode of the Purge series will hit theaters. That's called preloading. And that's going to happen with this Mars, Saturn, Uranus square. That part I don't get a good feeling about. I do not get a good feeling about that. And I really thought that last year, because we were really in the height of, the whole Summer of Floyd, with veneration of St. Floyd. I really thought that last 4th of July could have been really disastrous and dark, and it wasn't. And I think one of the reasons why was because there weren't a lot of people out. People were kind of traumatized, I think, by people. Look, thank God we have a short memory. Last summer was hell. It was hell. This time last year, we were in hell. Every single night was hell in America. It was hell night in America as we watched this country burn and statues come down. And if you had any sense as to what was taking place, you knew that we were in the throes of a Bolshevik revolution, that that's what was happening. And there was not one asshole that was doing anything about it, including one Donald John Trump. He didn't do anything about it. Sorry, I'm gonna bang on Trump a little bit here. He was like, well, he had to show people just how corrupt the system was. Oh, well, okay. Like, you probably could have figured that out in about 4 weeks. Max. And after that, hammer time. No, it didn't happen. The 4th of July, nothing happened either. This 4th of July might be a bit different. Number one, because of this aspect. Number two, people are going to be out. People are going to be out. They're going to be celebrating independence. Oh, we got the mask off. And, oh, this is a real Independence Day. And this is where I think it could get tricky. It could get totally tricky, especially with these aspects, especially because people are still pissed off. It's not like, hey, great, happy days are here again. COVID's over. Hey, how about that? I mean, we had somebody in chat who was talking about, hey, I got to get a carjacked before I go back to my work, saying I got to get carjacked. So it's not over. It has the semblance of looking like it's over, but this thing is far from over. Some of the players are being removed from the scene because they're going to move on to something else. They're going to need new players anyway. But it's far from over. And people may want to go out on 4th of July and have that sense that it is over. And you'd have a lot of people letting their guard down. So I'm just saying, situational awareness. And there are a lot of bad actors out there prompting people. Let's see what else we have. Cancer, Sun in Cancer, 6 degrees. And we have this trine going on with Jupiter. It's still in the trine. It's kind of moving out of the trine a little bit. Certainly 6 days ago, it was last Monday, nice Jupiter Sun trine. But still, I mean, these are good vibes, right? You've got nice flow between these two luminaries, even though one's retrograde. Good feeling, sort of a sense of optimism, a little bit of optimism with the Sun Jupiter trine, some good emotional content with the Sun in Cancer trine Jupiter. As the Sun begins to separate a little bit, that's going to start to fade a bit. And when it goes into Leo, of course, we're going to get into that Sun Saturn opposition. Briefly, it's going to be there for what about 10 days, roughly, like 5 degrees before, 5 days, 5 degrees after, so about 10 days. And we're going to get there, on the 23rd, or a little bit after the 23rd, probably about the 6th, 7th of August. You get into that Sun-Saturn opposition. But I think, the week starts off pretty nicely with the Sun-Jupiter trine. Again, still within that it's a nice 4-degree orb. You want to start off the week with some good feeling, right? Some sense that there's some flow and some grace in one's life. And then I think this aspect kind of communicates that. Let's see, we have Mercury in Gemini and in that trine with Saturn and the Moon. The Moon's starting to separate a little bit, but it's like right now, it's a good time to communicate. We can communicate in a way that's both, sort of articulate and bring in some feeling with the Moon. And that's kind of what's happening now. What are we talking about? Well, we talked about birth with the mother, right, in the Moon. So by the time you wake up tomorrow, the Moon will be separated a little bit more. Mercury will be at about 18 Gemini, so you'll still have a little bit of that Moon Mercury trine, which is cool, especially in Aquarius. You don't have to take anything personally. Depersonalize it. I think that's really the way to start off this week is depersonalize. Depersonalize and try to get into that flow of faith, which we've really been in for about a week now with that Sun Jupiter trine. So really Monday, it started off last Monday, the Sun approaching Jupiter, even if it was in Gemini. So yeah, I'd say about a week, really, from Monday to Monday. We've been in a good flow, faith flow, and just recognize it. Let's see what else. We talked about the Uranus square that's coming. I mean, I really feel like that's the big ticket item. That is the big ticket item, and it's going to happen this week, and it's really going to be very prominent by Monday, by Sunday of next week. That's my takeaway on that. Venus being to separate again from Neptune. We had that nice Venus Neptune trine, late degree Cancer. It was good. So we had some good vibes here, like over the last week, where we didn't have to get involved in a lot of ego distortion or a lot of ego battle, good sharing. Like the energy was good this last week, I would say. And it's still pretty good with the Sun trying to Jupiter and helping us get off on a pretty good start. There you go. I mean, there's your chart of the moment. There's your chart of the moment. I think the big aspect is that T-square coming up. All right. Let's get into some of these other charts that I have created for you tonight. And thank you for being here. You're watching the 11th house with me, Robert Phoenix. And let's see what we have here. All right, Sunday night. It's Sunday Night AstroLive with Jasper, the Astrological cat. All right, why don't we start with Sylvester Stallone? Sly Stallone. Interesting character. I'll tell you what's really interesting about him. His mother. Jackie's a trip. Jackie is a trip. All right, where are we with him? Okay, that's that with the United States. Iraqi premier. Comparison. So they're both. I thought I just had his. Why don't we just do this? I'm going to do him with. First of all, let's do him with the U.S. and because I could kill two birds with one stone here. Let's do that. Let's do that. Okay. So the inner wheel is Sly Stallone, born July 6th, 1946, 7:20 p.m., New York, New York. And he is a Sag rising. He's right there. I think he's like 28 Sag rising. So his ascendant is conjunct the galactic center. And you know, I feel like that's somebody who feels like that they have a real purpose and mission in life. You know, they really feel guided, which is what I think the galactic center can add to a chart. Like you got to figure out why you're here, and you have to be committed to the mission, whatever that mission is. Now he also has to tell the truth with Sag on the ascendant, and that's important. It's very important. Okay, so this is the United States ascendant, so they're kind of close, right? The United States ascendant is here, a Sagittarius, and Sly Stallone has a Sag ascendant, so they're both kind of in the same astrological zone. It's a good start. Let's go over here. We're going to see the Sun-Sun conjunction right there, clearly. July 4th, July 6th. They're synonymous. synonymous with the United States, and also if you watch a lot of Stallone's movies, I mean, he's had like a lot of kind of real working class, sort of Americana, kind of value stuff. I mean, clearly Rocky, the whole Rocky series is based on that. But there are other movies like Fist where he plays a union boss. Again, kind of a very Americana sort of dynamic. He's in the movie where he does the arm wrestling. Remember that movie? Again, a very American kind of thing. So a lot of his film output is tied into, in some ways, the American story. I think that film where he was doing the arm wrestling, he was also a truck driver too. So he was a truck driver and an arm wrestler. It doesn't get more American than that. Not a lot more American than that. So, man, I'm seeing this wrong. I'm seeing this thing wrong here. This is the, okay. So I got a big delay. Anyway, so we can see this right there. And what's also interesting is, again, sort of the placement as the U.S. sun is ingressing, and it's on the cusp of the 8th house, which is interesting, right? Because we're looking at it more as an 8th house sun than, say, a 7th house sun, which is going to give it kind of more behind the scenes, more culted, and dealing with things like money and other people's money. This is BlackRock, kind of. I could go to BlackRock from here, but I won't. I'm going to keep this with Sylvester Stallone. But there they are, the twin suns, right there. Okay, and then Jupiter and Venus in Sly Stallone's 7th house. So he's got a relationship with America. Right? He's a relationship with these very important kinds of elements that make up America. Venus-Jupiter conjunction, which again gets into this idea that everybody can have a chance here. I mean, that's really that Venus-Jupiter conjunction. You've got a shot, theoretically, right? You have a relationship with this idea that your life can grow and expand in a way that you can nurture and care for yourself and others, which is part of the American tradition, which gets into this idea of owning property, which, by the way, people in Europe could not do. You could not own property in Europe. A lot of people forget that. Prior to whatever happened in the Revolutionary War, again, we're going with a particular script in mind. Couldn't own property. Who owned the property? It was the king or the queen or the duke or the duchess. You didn't own it. So guess what? Here you could. And this is a relationship with property, relationship with home, values. Venus conjunct Cancer are family values, which have been decimated with this Pluto opposition. This is what's happened. Pluto's been opposing this stuff. Opposed Venus, opposed Jupiter, opposed the sun, right? Boom. So Pluto's done a number on these aspects of America, which is why Donald Trump really kind of rose to prominence, because he had a lot of Cancer in his chart. Saturn, Venus, Mercury, all in Cancer. All in Cancer. So people were, I mean, that Cancer stellium was a codec for the time, because everything else had been taking all these massive hits with this Pluto opposition. Anyway, so there it is, right there. Now, here's what I think is really interesting with Stallone's chart and the US chart. He's got this true node and Uranus conjunction in the 6th house. So the 6th house is a house that's related to health. And Stallone is kind of a health freak. And one could also make a very, very tiny leap. Wouldn't be a big leap to look at this as his relationship with sports medicine and steroids. Uranus in the 6th house and Gemini. Have you seen Stallone's body? The guy looks fucking great. You know why he looks great? He takes HGH and a bunch of other stuff. The guy, to this day, in fact, I think he was busted somewhere. I think it was in Australia or New Zealand or someplace, and he had all this human growth hormone and stuff. So we know that he doctors his body. And that's a true node Gemini, Uranus Gemini, 6th house. He's experimenting on his body. But here comes Mars, right there. Bang, right? What is Mars? Mars is martial. Mars is masculine. It's male energy, right? Mars rules soldiers like Rambo, boxers like Rocky, soldiers of fortune like the Dispensables or whatever they were called. Mars plays a huge role in Sly Stallone's life. What is he? He's an action star. He's an action star. And where did he really come to prominence? It's the Rocky film. It's boxing. And it's right there in the 6th house. So his true node is conjunct the Mars, US Mars in Gemini. Bang. Right there. And he's got this Uranus conjunction. And it happens fairly quickly for him. Fairly quick. He was in a soft porn movie, by the way. It was called The Italian Stallion. That's where he got his nickname. Anyway. But it happens pretty quickly. He's got a few films. He's got The Lords of Flatbush, which I had seen. I saw it at the drive-in theater, by the way. Lords of Flatbush, where he plays, hey, kind of one of these guys, right? In Flatbush. And then he's got Death Race 2000. He might have another film or two. But in 1976, when Rocky finally hits, it happens in a big way. He's just coming off his Saturn return. And we're going to look at that. He's just coming off his Saturn return with Rocky. So he's got Saturn also in Cancer. And he's got this Sun-Saturn conjunction in the 7th house. You know, it's not bad. I mean, one of the things that, somebody with the Sun in the 7th house would have to understand about themselves, even with somebody like Stallone, and you can really see his fame, by the way, up here, right, with Moon Jupiter on the midheaven. That's where his fame is. And with the moon on the midheaven can really capture sort of this zeitgeist of the public. You know, moon on the midheaven is really good for things like mass marketing and tapping into what people feel, like having this intuitive, like he wrote Rocky basically as kind of a modified version of the life of Chuck Wepner, who was known as the Bayonne Bleeder. And this guy was just a character. He was a boxer. Chuck Wepner fought so many fights. Oh my God. I think he fought like 70 pro fights, and he would bleed easily. I think he went 11 or 12 rounds with Ali. Anyway, Rocky's based on Chuck Wepner's life. But the way that the moon works, and the moon can be very capricious on the midheaven as well. He's going through a tough time. Look at that. He's got Pluto squaring his moon. He's going through. The other thing I didn't know about him is he lost his kid. He lost his oldest kid, Sage Stallone, who was an actor. I didn't realize that. I don't really pay attention to Sylvester Stallone a lot. But I was looking him up, and it was, that's hard. Lose your oldest kid, your oldest son. And with these people, you never know, right? You never know if you're the sacrifice land or whatever. You don't know. But regardless of whether that is part of the equation, it's got to be tough. And his son was an actor and a director. And he's got other kids too. But what's interesting about his kids, and for the ones that I could find, they were mostly like Gemini and Cancer. He had mostly Gemini Cancer kids, kind of all around. I think he had one that was a Leo or Virgo. Anyway, kind of clustered over here in this part of his chart. But the moon can be very capricious on the midheaven. And there was a time when his career was down. I mean, he went through kind of a real
flat phase. I remember, and I think it was when he was doing that arm wrestling movie. Then he did Nighthawks. That's where he met Brigitte Nielsen, by the way, was the Nighthawks film, which is this kind of spy movie that happens over in Europe. Anyway, he went through this flat period, and then he comes back again with Rambo. So again, that's very indicative of the moon on the midheaven. It's tidal, right? Tidal. The career is up, the career is down. There's popularity and fame, and then it goes away. It's very tidal with the moon on the midheaven. And then Jupiter is here, which is quite expansive. And I don't know, I'm not a woman, but I would assume that women would like Sylvester Stallone with the moon on the midheaven. I mean, I think he tried to do some romantic comedies, but he wasn't really good at that. Although I do think he has a pretty good sense of humor. But Jupiter is going to also, when you hit it and when the tide comes in, man, Jupiter is going to make it really big, really big. What's interesting is he's got Saturn coming up on his midheaven. And that Saturn transit of the midheaven, is his mom still alive? Is Jackie still? Jackie might still be alive. But I think this Pluto square to his moon and Saturn coming into play, that might be the end of Jackie. I think she's still alive, isn't she? Pretty sure she is. She's a trip. She's an astrologer. And there's the moon right there, right on the midheaven. He had kind of a famous mother. Like, she was sort of a well-known astrologer. I think even pre-Sly Stallone. And maybe too much exposure with his mother. I don't know. I mean, that's a lot, right? Moon, Jupiter. But I would think that Jackie might, I think she's still alive. I don't think she's, let me just, now I'm curious. Now I have to find out. Now I got to find out if she's still alive. Let's see what we got here. Then she started doing those weird readings. Very weird readings. He's got that brother Frank Stallone, who's also the composer. Did he compose some music for one of his movies? Let's see, Jackie. Oh, she's dead. My bad. Jackie passed away. There we go. Last year, Pluto. There's that Pluto square to the moon. She died on September 21st, Los Angeles, California. Jackie Stallone was 99. She 99? No, she wasn't 99. I wouldn't know. But she was born. Well, she was. She was fucking 99 years old. If she had lived another year to her birthday, 11/29, so she's a Sagittarius. Oh, her son is right on his south node. Poor bastard. Look at that. He's got that south node in Sag. So her son was right there. Yikes. 12th house. He's probably embarrassed by her. Although I bet he loved her too. Like, I mean, how could he not love her? With Jupiter and the moon there, but then Saturn, her sun conjunct his sun. She died last year. There it is. I mean, he's got Pluto, he's got the moon in his chart at 22 Libra. So last year, December 21st, we're right at 25 Libra. Right there, bang. I bet that was intense for him. But that was very intense. He's going to have another chapter to his career, though. Like the final chapter in Sylvester Stallone's life has not been written yet, because he's got Saturn. Saturn's peaking up here. Just wait. Sly's got another film in him, and a good one. He's going to have Saturn in his 12th house. I mean, 10th house rather. He's going to have that Saturn-Moon conjunction, which is kind of intense. You know what I think? I think he wants to make a serious movie. That's what I think. I think he wants to make a serious movie. And maybe that's where this is going. All right, a little bit more here with this chart with America. Saturn conjunct the vertex. Hello. The vertex, the second ascendant. His Saturn's right there, right on America's vertex. So he's connected to the story. He's connected to the American story. And he's going to tell that story right there. Mercury conjunct his vertex, conjunct the U.S. true node in Leo. And he wrote the script of Rocky, and that put him on the map right there. So you're looking at somebody who's completely tied in to the modern American mythos. And you can see it right here, the action hero stuff, True Node conjunct Mars. You can see it here, connecting in with this idea. You know, Cancer is very underdogish. You know, it's very underdogish because Capricorn is like, you know, I am the Lord. I am Lord Saturn. I rule everything. And Cancer is very underdogish. So yeah, well, here I come. That gritty little Cancer. And America loves underdogs. Although I'm not so sure anymore. Maybe that whole thing is going to be tossed out too. Who knows? But he's in, man. He's in. He is in. You can just see it right here, right? Right here, action star. You know, you got that Mars trining the moon, Mars trining Jupiter. It's Gemini. You know, he gets to portray somebody else like Chuck Wepner, even though he's really not saying it's Chuck Wepner. And then boom, the Sun conjunction, and then Saturn conjunct the vertex, the American vertex, and then Mercury conjunct the True Node in Leo. Again, in some ways, writing the script for the American story with Rocky. There you go. There's your connect. And again, I'm trying to make this connection with him, America, and his film career. Now, let's take a look at the premiere of Rocky. This is really interesting. This is a total like astrological kind of cell right here. Total astrological cell. All right. So the premiere happened on November 21st, 1976, which is not very far off from his mother's birthday, is it? His mother was born November 29th, so 7 days before his mother's birthday. Rocky premieres in New York City, and I've got a 7 p.m. here premiere time. I'm just playing with the astrology a little bit. So let's punch this chart up, and this is great shit. I'm going to show you like kind of 2 examples of this. Okay, so remember now, I said that he'd gone through his Saturn return. It took 28 days to make this movie, but it took a while to write it and shop it. And that's what he was going through his Saturn return. Like everything that he was working on with Rocky was right here. So then he has Saturn going through his 8th house, and it's right there, right here, November 21st. And the Saturn transit of the 8th house is a big transit, huge transit in astrology, because you wind up having to like die in some ways, but then you can be reborn as Saturn moves through the 8th house, gets to the 9th house, and then you understand what happened on some level, right? Look at this. He's got a Saturn-Pluto conjunction that night, right? That Saturn was there. We know that Saturn was there, right? It's there. It's going to be in his 8th house. But when this movie premieres, and then I think it hits theaters big time on the 25th. Christmas Day, it opens across the country. And this is a life-changing period of time right there, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in his 8th house. We can even see Pluto up here conjuncting Chiron, like in his 9th house. And again, Pluto's slow moving. It would have been here for a while, right? Eventually, it's going to transit across the midheaven and conjunct Jupiter and conjunct the moon and all that stuff. And what are we going to have? We're going to have a Rocky franchise. That's what's going to happen. And even with Chiron is a little underdogish too. Chiron's got that spunky kind of underdog vibe and balance, because here in Libra, it's balancing things out. And it's, this is a big moment. He's got Saturn on Pluto. He's got Pluto and Chiron. We have a sextile going on between the two of them. It's changing his life. Totally changing his life. And that night, the sun and Mars and the moon were all in his 11th house. So it's going to be social. And, the 11th house has always been connected to media, whether it's radio or TV. Those are very Aquarian mediums. Film is more of a Piscean medium because you go into a dark place, right? And you're having this thing projected onto the screen, and nobody else is there with you, right? You're in a group of people having a ritual. So a movie theater is like a ritual space. But in the 11th house, everybody's having the same experience, through television and radio. It's more of a group thing, right? So this is going to be Mars. So again, even the Sun-Mars conjunction, it's really heightened this idea of a boxer, this boxer that kind of overcomes these odds. And it's in some ways, it's a very scorpionic story. It's a very, very scorpionic story in a lot of ways, right? Transforming his life and transforming, his relationships and proving that he can be somebody. It's very scorpionic. And we have the moon. Where's the moon? I think it's in Sagittarius. So we have the moon in Sagittarius. Mars, look at that. I'm sorry, Mars is at the early degree Sag. But we do have this conjunction with the sun, which is at the final degree, the 29th degree of Scorpio, anaretic degree. So we do have the Sun-Mars conjunction, but your Mars in Sagittarius is triumphant. It's triumphant. It really is. What a great time to have an opening for a movie. And then we have the moon in Sag, and that's going to be pretty close to his mother, right? So his mother's son, is going to be right about there. Right about there. I bet you she was predicting all this shit, right? So a lot of Sagittarian energy at this time. And again, this is just with his chart, because we can see it play out here. But Sagittarius energy is, and it's a new moon too. That's the other thing. It's premiering on a new moon. And we know that the moon plays a really significant role in Stallone's chart with the moon on the midheaven. Look at this. I mean, this is really, if you're going to have a premiere, what a great night to have this premiere for Rocky, and for him to kind of ride this wave in a lot of ways. So the other chart I have that's connected to this is, it's a bit reversed in some ways. So you're going to see how, where is this? I think it's right here. It's going to be right. Okay. So this is how theoretically his chart impacts the moment of the premiere. So let's look at this. So here we have 7 o'clock at night, sun in the first house. So he's going to be prominent right here. Sun in the first house. And I think this is, again, even if this was 8 o'clock, which is going to be a little bit late, but even if it was 8 o'clock, you still have Mars in the true node in the 5th house, which is for creativity and, all these kinds of things that are related to pastimes, like boxing, good stuff. Sun here, Sun-Mars conjunction, again, kind of in the 5th house, 6th house, coming out of the 5th, going into the 6th, boxing, pastimes, training. What do we see with Rocky? All the training shit, right? Punching the slabs of meat, running up the steps in Philadelphia. That's all very, very 6th housey. He's your average working class guy, who's going to make a name for himself. Boom, right there. Sun 6th house. Perfect. Perfect. The stars were aligned for Sylvester Stallone to hit a grand slam with Rocky. And his relationship, obviously, with the United States is a big one. It really, in some ways, it is really chapter 1 of this story. Chapter 2 is Tom Cruise, which we're going to go to right now. But before I do, I'm going to just show you a couple of stills that I grabbed that kind of, will get you to think about, Rocky in a lot of ways, right? Like, this is right here. This is so like Mars. This is so Mars in Sagittarius in the 6th house. Like, look at that, right? It's just right here. And you've got this really interesting alignment going on at the same time. Like he's champion. He's the people's champ right here. And everybody knows this scene. Everybody loves the scene. And I remember when my parents came home, he's like celebrating Tartaria. By the way, John Levi's show on Tartaria today, great. Talks about astrology. John's getting into a little astrology there, talking about the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer and how they represent a different time. And we should really be in the tropics of Pisces and Virgo. Tip of the cap, John. Way to go. So I remember my parents coming home and they were touched by this movie. They were touched and they were inspired. Remember, they both had Pluto and Cancer, my parents, born in 1935 and 1938. So this Cancerian tale of the underdog and the everyday man, which is where they came from, their backgrounds really spoke to that. So there you go. There's some iconographic. Adrian! And then who can forget this stuff right here? Who can forget? Classic. This is Chuck Wepner. This is Chuck Wepner. This is almost like a crucifixion scene in some ways. And Burgess Meredith. Right. Right. This is it right here, man. This is it. This is like there's a lot of like, again, kind of Christian symbolism in this. He looks like this guy is about to be crucified, and then he's going to be resurrected here, come out and answer the bell, right? He's going to answer the bell. He doesn't win, but he gives Apollo creed, everything Apollo can handle. By the way, I saw an interesting video with Rajneesh last night. And Rajneesh has he's got a fascinating take on the crucifixion. And Rajneesh has those dead eyes. He looks at you. And he said, Jesus, he could not have been crucified. He did not die on the cross. Jesus made a deal with Pontius Pilate. So I'm not going to do the whole thing in Rajneesh, but what Rajneesh says is kind of interesting. It's kind of interesting if you think about it. And again, you got to just go with me here. Historical Jesus, okay? Historical Jesus. Just go with me here for a second. So what he said was that Jesus made a deal with Pontius Pilate. He said, look, man, if you're going to, because they talk, right? If you're going to crucify me late in the day. Okay? Late in the day. Like around 6. And Pilate's like, yeah, okay. So they get him up there and they crucify him, right? And Rajneesh says the people that died with the desanguination of the crucifixion, it would take sometimes up to 3 to 4 days for people to die when they were crucified. And he says that Christ, Jesus, was only on the cross for 6 hours. And he said that you couldn't die after 6 hours. So the reason why he waited till 6 o'clock at night to be crucified, this is kind of interesting, is that at midnight, the clock would change and it would be the Sabbath. It would be Saturday, right? Because it's supposed to be Good Friday when this whole thing starts. I mean, think about this now.
So the Pharisees and the Orthodox, the Sanhedrin, that group, right? Saturday rolls around, they don't do anything. They don't do anything, including crucifixions, by the way, because it's a Saturday, Sabbath day. So apparently, the deal is that at midnight they took him down. Remember, this is all Rajneesh. At midnight they took him down and they put him in a cave. And the idea was that on Sunday they were going to start it back up again, and they were going to put him in the cave and let him rot there for a few days. But then the disciples come and Jimmy Jack the stone, roll away the stone, and then according to Rajneesh, Jesus moves to India. He lives in India to the age of 130. Interesting little factoid, whether you believe it or not. But it's kind of interesting if you think about it. You really think about it. It's an interesting story, especially the timing part. Anyway, let's look at Tom Cruise. Let's look at Tom Cruise. Yeah, before I get into his chart, I'm going to show you two pictures from the movie Taps. And I remember watching Taps, and I didn't know who Tom Cruise was. Wasn't he one of those Coppola movies like Rumblefish or something like that, or one of those films? Was it one of those movies? Was he one of those S.E. Hinton movies? I'm not sure. Maybe. Anyway, so I'm watching Taps, and then I see this guy who I didn't know he was. I'm like, who's that motherfucker? That motherfucker's intense. Who was that guy? And of course, as I've watched the movie and things play out and go back, it's Tom Cruise. So I'm going to show you the scene where Cruise, really, I think, comes onto American cinema. It's right here. And Taps is about it's a film about a military academy. And they're going to put condos in where the military academy is. And these guys who are training to become soldiers become like vigilantes. Like they're going to stand their ground. And they're not going to allow their beloved military academy to get turned into condos. And Tom Cruise is, what has he got there? What the hell is that? I guess that's the bar for the curls, right? That's what that is. It's right here. It's the belt. It's the belt for the curls. Anyway, Tom Cruise of Sean Penn and Tim Hutton, out of these three, he's clearly the most intense. And he's clearly the one that is willing to kill some fuckers. Okay. So I'll show you another Tom Cruise picture from that movie. It gives you an idea here. So again, this is when he hits the screen right there. And there are other pictures that are not that far off from like demonstrating that kind of intensity. Like he's way more intense than Sean Penn and Tim Hutton in this movie. Way more intense. And if I wanted to, I could have found another 3 or 4 pictures where he's got a gun and doing shit. Okay, so that's Taps. That's when he really, I think, comes onto the scene. And I'm showing you those pictures for a reason. Astrologically, you'll see why. Okay, so let's look at Tom Cruise's chart. And again, let's look at it with the United States, just like you do with Sly Stallone. So if you thought that Stallone's chart was resonant with America and Americana. Where do you see this? Okay, here we go. We know that there's a Sun-Sun conjunction. 3rd of July, 4th of July. Boom. And Cruz has all these asteroids around his sun. By the way, he's a Scorpio rising. It's going to play an important role here. We start talking about taps. He's got Vesta. He's got Juno. He's got Ceres. All the asteroids, with the exception of Pallas, they're all here. Juno, which is young, and Vesta, which is old, and Ceres, which is maternal. It's also kind of interesting that, and we'll get into this with Emily, that the first person that we pair him with romantically is Mimi Rogers, who I think is his handler through Scientology, who's an older woman, right? So here we have this series here. We'll get into this with Emily a little bit. We'll get into some of these people in his life. And, he was married to Mimi Rogers. Again, they're both Scientology. I think she was the one who kind of brought him in and was his trainer / handler. She's got an interesting career arc as well. If you ever want to watch a really trippy film, watch The Rapture with Mimi Rogers and David Duchovny. Very intense movie. Anyway, so yeah, we've got the older woman, right? Vesta and Ceres. And then ultimately he hooks up with Katie Holmes, who was a younger woman, right? So we have the older woman, with the woman's kind of in between, and we have the younger woman so he's got three wives, Nicole Kidman, Mimi Rogers. He was married to Mimi Rogers, and Katie Holmes. We could probably make a case for all three here. And this would probably be Mimi Rogers. Who knows if he even had sex with her? Nicole Kidman, and then we'll go with Katie Holmes and Juno. So the three goddesses, the three asteroid goddesses. Okay, here we go. Sun-Sun conjunction. Boom. Where does this chart really go off? It's right here. Tom Cruise has his true node is in Leo, and it's conjunct to midheaven. And where's the United States midheaven? Right here. I'm sorry, United States true node right here. Conjunct Tom Cruise's fucking true node, which is conjunct his midheaven. So he was born to be an actor. This is what he's supposed to be doing right here. Tom Cruise, where he's not good, home and family. Home and family. I mean, that's a disaster, really. When you look at his life with that shit, it's a disaster. He's got the older woman, Mimi Rogers, really more of a handler. He tries to do the same with Katie Holmes, and it just doesn't work, for whatever reason. He's got this Saturn thing going on. Who knows? Cruise. I mean, there's all kinds of rumors that he's secretly gay. He's got again, whatever this thing is down here, not good. Now he might ultimately, because he's going through his Saturn return, isn't he? Well, wouldn't you know that he's going through his Saturn return? And he blew up when he had that Mission Impossible. Wow, interesting. Anyway, Saturn return. What's he going to do here? What's he going to do? Is he going to try to have another marriage, another shot at this family thing? That's going to be really interesting. Anyway, he is much more successful up here, and like Stallone, he's got the moon conjunct his midheaven. Now, he did marry somebody from another country, Nicole Kidman, right? Ninth house. She's from, where is she from? Australia, right? She's Australian. She's Australian. So boom, moon in the ninth house, woman from another country. And the moon also, again, kind of a wide conjunction with the midheaven. Not quite like Stallone's, really hugging that midheaven. But this right here, we got the Sun-Sun conjunction and these two true nodes. And man, Tom Cruise is, to me, you can think whatever you want of him. MK Ultra puppet, Scientology freak, crazy son of a bitch on Oprah Winfrey, crazy Scientology son of a bitch on Oprah Winfrey. But he is this is the chart to me that represents America
and an iconic American more than any other actor I've ever seen. It's baked in. It's totally baked in. You got the Sun-Sun conjunction. You got the true node conjunction with his true node right on the midheaven. He's got Jupiter in the 5th house, which is going to be tremendous. I mean, that's Leo's house. And actually, I think Tom Cruise is a pretty good actor. If you've ever seen Magnolia, where he has to play this guy who is really kind of uncovered, he's fucking amazing. You know, Tom Cruise. I think Tom Cruise is actually a great actor. Whether you like him or not, he's a great actor, and I think he does a lot of his own stunts. He was an asshole with that latest Mission Impossible, but I get it. Like, he's trying to keep a movie on track in the midst of COVID and all that bullshit. Anyway, but boom, 4th house, Jupiter Pisces. That's acting chops. Chiron conjunct Jupiter. That's empathy. Like, I think Tom Cruise can feel into characters. He's a Scorpio rising. He doesn't have a grand trine in water, but he's got Neptune in the 1st house, which makes him empathic and kind of wounded with retrograde going on there. So playing that role of Ron Kovic and playing a paraplegic with Neptune in the 1st house, or quadriplegic, right? Quadriplegic. There it is. He could do it. He could totally do it. And he's got that trine with Jupiter and the Sun. You know, these are the acting chops. And the 9th house, believe it or not, Tom Cruise is on a quest for truth. And who knows really what he's got in his skeleton in his closet and all that bullshit, right? Because, you know, he's in Hollywood. You got to do some dirty shit. But ultimately, Sun in the 9th house, you're kind of on the path for the quest for truth. That's kind of how this game works, right? And in Cancer, he's going to have to feel his way through it. But he's part of the American story. And he's got this, you know, new moon. I mean, he's just coming, he's got this kind of fresh moon, which is about experience. And he's got Leo, moon of Leo, which is going to be, I want it all, right? That's the I want it all kind of moon. It's not quite moon in Cancer, which would be really new, but it's still in that new phase, and it's different, right? Moon in Cancer would be more introspective, more, kind of more emotional, but not Moon in Leo. Moon in Leo is like, I want it all. And his characters kind of convey that in a lot of ways. He's played a lot of different roles too. Like he played that Jack Reacher guy. I mean, yeah, Cruise is an interesting character. Another Cancerian actor that is very much a part of the American story, though I'm not going to do his chart tonight, is Robin Williams for a very, very different reason. Here we got Mercury conjunct the U.S. Mars, and to me, this is that Mission Impossible shit, right here. 8th house, Scorpio, spy stuff, and he gets to play different characters. He's supposed to be one guy, but he's really another guy. He's Ethan Hunt, but he takes on different identities. This is the strength of the Mission Impossible series right there. Mercury, Mars, 8th house. And even you could probably make a bit of a case in some ways. I'm trying to figure out where Lestat is. Is it the 8th house? Maybe it's the 12th house with Saturn here, the Saturn trine. And maybe it's the 12th house, the interview with the vampire, which is clearly a very homoerotic movie, right? With Brad Pitt and Antonio Banderas and all the young dudes, all the young blood-sucking dudes. But yeah, maybe the 8th house there as well. Now, Cruise has some issues, right? He's got that Mercury square. Well, he's got it now. He's got this Mercury-Neptune square. He doesn't have an issue with Mercury natally. But he's got that Mercury-Neptune square. That's going on now. That's good. That's interesting. That's interesting. Pay attention to what Tom Cruise has to say here. Is that? Let's see. Let me see. Oh, that's the United States Neptune. My bad. I'm sorry. Oh, I was looking at this from a different perspective. That's interesting because maybe he is not telling the truth, right? Maybe that's part of what Rob was talking about. Well, he's an MK Ultra puppet. Maybe that's this Mercury Neptune square. Like there's a part of him that is not telling the truth right here, from like the secret of the eighth house that he's hiding, and it being played out in the 11th house, which is the internet, publicity, gossip. That's kind of interesting. There's that Mercury Neptune square. Remember, this is the US chart. Okay. But in his own chart, Neptune is trining the sun. He's got a lot of action going from Neptune and Jupiter to that sun, both of which are creative, right? I mean, you can tell why he's an actor. It's there. And he's got that true note in Leo and Venus in Leo, 10th house. And I guess you'd have appeal for women. I guess, women like Tom Cruise. And Uranus and Pluto also in the 12th house. So that's collective energy. He's going to be somebody that is going to have this impact on the collective. A few good men. You can't handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. There's that Mercury-Neptune square. You can't handle the truth. But some of these movies change America. Top Gun changed America in a lot of ways. A Few Good Men changed America. Cruise has done this. Some of those movies haven't. Some of them flopped. And then Uranus in the 10th house is, to me, Uranus in the 10th house for him is Eyes Wide Shut. It's Eyes Wide Shut. Number one, it doesn't happen in America. And number two, it's a role that's very different for him. And in a lot of ways, it's culture changing. Like Eyes Wide Shut is culture changing. And he's got this really interesting opposition with the US moon. So, that would, again, I would try to make a case. I would try to make a case for that with Eyes Wide Shut, with the moon being in another country and dealing with like the secrets of his relationship with Nicole Kidman. Once that movie was over, they were toast. They were done. They were toast. And I think Kubrick kind of turned the screws on him a little bit. And again, it's interesting, right? Like we find out about this programming that Kubrick wants to use Cruise for, with that movie. Fascinating. This is a really fascinating chart, and a fascinating chart as it relates to his filmography and his connections to the United States of America. Tom Cruise is really the most iconic American actor ever, period, end of story. You could have Jimmy Stewart or John Wayne or Clint Eastwood. They're not iconic, though. Like Clint Eastwood never played a role like, what was, I just talked about it, the football movie, right? Where he plays a football. I just talked about, sorry, I'm just having a moment. When I get into astrological mode, sometimes I don't always go back into the minutia, but Clint Eastwood didn't play that role. Clint Eastwood didn't play in Risky Business, All the Right Moves. He didn't do those things, right? So Clint Eastwood is American in a very different kind of way. John Wayne is American in a very different kind of way. But we see Tom Cruise as a young man. We see Tom Cruise kind of, mature before our very eyes and go through all these different stages. Whereas John Wayne didn't do that. Clint Eastwood didn't do that. Jimmy Stewart didn't do that. People that we think of being these all-American actors. And Tom Cruise does. And that's what separates him from these other icons. And also the Cancerian relationship with the country. Okay. So I'm going to show you like the opening night for Taps. This is really interesting. This is totally interesting. Okay. I did the same chart twice. But I know I have this one. Okay. So this is the opening night for Taps. And TAPS went out into limited distribution on the 9th of December, and I think on the 21st, it went into widespread distribution. So I would assume they would have had a showing at a theater in New York City. And back in those days, like the first showings in limited distribution would be at a matinee, and usually around noon. Okay, so I took noon on, I think was this a Wednesday? Yes. Remember they used to change the movies over on Wednesdays and Thursdays. That's when the new movies would come in on Wednesdays and Thursdays, mostly Thursdays, sometimes Wednesdays. So this is Wednesday, December 9th, 1981. And look at where Jupiter is. It's right on Cruz's ascendant. I mean, it didn't have to be the 9th of December, right? It didn't have to be exactly that day, but it was. And it's right at his ascendant. And what do you see in that movie? You see intensity. You see fucking intensity. That's what jumps off the screen with Tom Cruise with this movie. Right, there's Jupiter right there. Bang. That night, we've got a Moon-Mars conjunction right here. Little Tommy boy, Moon-Mars conjunction. So it's going to capture people's imagination. And, you know, the guy's doing fucking curls, right? Like, that's Mars, Moon, Taurus, body. Mars and Taurus, body. True Node is transiting up here through the 9th house, his 9th house. Look at that. Boom. True Node, 9th house. Where's the U.S. True Node? It's right here. So we have 3 examples of the True Node, although this one is in Cancer. And guess what? It's going to go this way, and it's going to conjunct his sun. And this is where Tom Cruise's career is really going to take off. Right here. This is ready for liftoff. Right here. As the True Node begins to conjunct his natal sun. Now, what's also interesting is that we looked at the U.S. chart. And the United States has Saturn in Libra, and we saw Saturn in Libra in Cruise's 12th house. And here we go. The United States was going through its Saturn return. With Saturn, every time the Saturn comes around in Libra, the United States goes through its Saturn return. And we saw this when good old Barry Soetoro was elected president. What a Saturn return that fucking was, right? So that's where it started. Ended with Saturn and Scorpio. Anyway, so there, it's right there, bang, right? And part of this Saturn-Pluto conjunction that was really pretty close at that time. Interesting it would be in the 7th house. So, you know, down here, all this Sagittarian energy is going to be in his 2nd house. And ultimately, it's probably going to, you know, ground him and do pretty well for him career-wise. Part of fortune right there, conjuncting Venus in the 10th house. And again, I mean, even if the date where this premieres, I would have thought it'd be around noon, right? And probably New York, because it would have been nationwide, including New York. Again, but wherever, like, let's say it would have been 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock, these planets in Sagittarius would still be in aspect, right, with Uranus and Venus and, you know, his 10th house. So this is, to me, this is the takeoff moment. And you can just see in those pictures that Jupiterian, it's expanding. Like, this movie is going to expand Tom Cruise's identity. It's going to make him a much bigger figure, much bigger star on the American scene. And then we've got this Jupiter trine going on too. So astrology is interesting. You can track things astrologically, including these, you know, these so-called movie stars, these luminaries, the luminaries of the luminary. Okay, I know it's late. I'm going to get out of here soon. But I want to get into this thing with McAfee. I'm going to save the Miami chart for tomorrow. And so you can watch it on 15 Minutes of Flame, which is my website, 15minutesofflame.com. So I'm gonna show you the interesting thing about McAfee. And it has nothing to do with his natal chart. It has to do with his progress chart. Okay, so that's his name. Okay, I gotta get the progress chart. Where'd it go? All right, it's gonna be over here. Give me 1 sec. Let's see. That. Yes, right here. Okay. So I'm going to show you that John McAfee, I'm going to establish with his natal chart. Okay. Establish with the natal chart. So let's just take a quick peek at his natal, but I'm not really interested. I just want to use this for establishing something. All right. So we got his natal chart here. Born September 18th, 1945 in Cinderford, England, which is kind of interesting, 12 p.m. high noon. Very Virgoan, Sun, Juno, Mercury, all Virgo. So he's a smart guy. We know he's a smart guy. Jupiter, Neptune conjunction, that's myth making. That's total myth making right there. Kind of larger than life. Kind of a wide sun. He's got a Sun Jupiter conjunction, not a Sun Neptune conjunction, but a Sun Jupiter, which is kind of funny, right? So we see the sun here. There's the sun. There's conjunct Jupiter, but is it conjunct Neptune? No, even though Neptune is on the same degree. That's crazy. Anyway, but he does have this kind of larger than life and mythical kind of persona for whatever it's worth. Another guy, Cancerian character, true node in Cancer, Mars in Cancer, 8th house hidden, very hidden. He's got the 9th house thing down, right? Lived in Nicaragua, lived in Belize, born in England, moves to the United States, which is very 8th house. You know, he came to another country. Theoretically, and again, I say theoretically, died in another country, and maybe he did die. There are some people who believe that McAfee died in Belize, and that you go through, okay, so I should probably show you guys this video. I think I'll show you the video. I'll show you the video. And the reason I'll show you the video is because I think it's really connected into what I'm going to show you astrologically. So we've got his true node in Cancer. But guess what happens with his true node? It goes retrograde. And it goes all the way back to, now the reason why I'm showing this to you. It goes all the way back to this, which is again, progress chart, 29 Gemini. John McAfee's true node retrograded, progressed to 29 Gemini. What do we know about Gemini? Gemini has to do with twins, has to do with clones, doubles, multiples. Progressed Sun, 10 Sagittarius. Progressed Moon, 24 Scorpio. A lot of 8th house stuff, right? Progressed 8th house, Neptune, Juno, Chiron, Jupiter. But that's not what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is this, right? The anaretic degree of Gemini. And why am I interested in it? Because we don't know who John McAfee was. Really, I mean, we knew who he was up to a point. But we didn't really know who John McAfee really was, especially maybe even lately. We have no idea who this guy was, or if he was even John McAfee. And I'm going to play a video which I think speaks more to this 29th degree, this anaretic degree of Gemini, which is there's nothing there, right? There's no there with the 29th degree.
there's no energy in the sign. It's flat. It's like a black hole. And yet we have this image. We have this image, which is about duality and twins and cloak and dagger and smoke and mirrors. All right, so I'm going to play this video real quick. Let me show you guys this. It gets into exactly what I was talking about. Exactly what I was talking about. Oh, I got them all. Hold on. Got too many of these going. Okay, here we go. Right. Give me 1 sec here, boys and girls. This is pretty cool. This is a pretty cool work right here. Tamara Magdalene Lioness of the Yeshua 2. Got to have some, this is good work. You did this, Tamara Magdalene Lioness. Good work. All right, get ready. I'm going to take you on a little bit of a ride here. Keep in mind, True No Gemini 29.
John McAfee found
That's Chris Cornell.
Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise theme. Okay, it goes into some other places. It goes into some other places, but you guys get the drift, right? Essentially, what this person is saying is that there were many McAfees. There were many McAfees, and that that they that they could use any of these McAfees at any time, and still carry on a narrative even after his death, even though his death may have occurred sometime even before he theoretically died in prison, right? I mean, that's where the 29th degree of Gemini comes into play. That anaretic degree of Gemini, you don't know who the fuck is who or what, right? It's all mirrors. It is all a hall of mirrors at that level. A hall of mirrors. I just thought it was interesting because it really, that true note, that progressed true note is right in that zone. Is right in that zone. Like, who was he really, and what was he really doing, and is he really just another one a manifestation of, a deep state agent. This is interesting. This is interesting. So the Sabian symbol for 29 Gemini it's an interesting one. It's a parade of bathing beauties before large beach crowds. It's a spectacle. The setting of social standards through personal excellence and competition. In this very American scene, we see a very ancient and basic process, which can operate at several levels. Society sets certain collectively acceptable cultural standards and recompenses by prestige and fame the persons who embody them, physically or mentally. This generates emulation and a desire to bring the social images to their most perfect and concrete manifestation. The archetypal image or canon of proportion is thus incarnated for all to behold and be fascinated by. The process of exteriorization is completed. This is the last phase of the sixth scene. In the zodiac, the spring season has come to a close. Isn't that interesting? Like, this thing has happened just after the beginning of summer, the summer solstice, right? It's right here. This is the last phase of the sixth scene in the zodiac. The spring season has come to a close. It is summer solstice. Fulfillment leads to new demands upon the individual human consciousness. The show is over. Now comes the hour of decision. How about that? The show is over. Now comes the hour of decision. And with that, the show is over. And the hour of decision is 9. But this show is over. I want to thank everybody for being here and being a part of tonight's experience. Let's see, where are we? Where are you guys at? Are they still around? Yeah, let's see, what do we have here? We got 167 people left. All right. Let's see, where are we with the chat? I'm feeling like I wanted to get rid of someone. Maybe. The condo thing is a whole different thing. We'll get into that tomorrow. Whole different thing. I'll put that together on my event tomorrow, my show tomorrow. Okay, I'm out of here. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart, 2 7 possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for being here tonight. It's always a pleasure on Sunday nights. Catch me on 15 Minutes of Flame tomorrow on Monday. Until then, bye for now.